Mr. Wiggle, and Dr. Michael Kolo. So without wasting much time, first we would like to show how impressed we are. That is worthy of note that Ringier took the initiative to ask us for this forum, and we're very impressed that they see us dignified enough to want to talk to us. So thank you so much. And yesterday, they sent a representative from their company to come and check this, and then when we asked why, they said it was because they like to pay attention to tiny details, and that is one of our key philosophy in PAU. So that is something that we have a common ground. Thank you very much. We're really impressed by that. Without taking much of our time, I'd like to hand over the mic to Osagi.
Good afternoon. I like the energy, I like the vibrant attitude you guys have. I'm sure we're going to enjoy this session. So let's just jump right into it. Let's start with the discussion on the role of modern journalism globally and in Nigeria. I'll be having these questions or discussing these questions with three of you. This question is for you, Mapalda. How has ethics and values changed over the years in journalism globally?
Let me start maybe with why journalism is so extremely important for our society, no matter if it's Nigeria or if it's Switzerland or if it's Myanmar or wherever. In today's world, anybody can publish anything, and it's going to be distributed throughout the world. That's what digital platforms today actually do. So if people want to be, in order to have an informed life, inform themselves, I think journalism is more important than ever. It's no coincidence that this buzzword fake news has been used for political reasons, but it has installed itself as a, I would say, almost synonym for a debate we have out there in the world. And it's up to you in here, and I appreciate very much the energy and you all working on thinking and learning about how to, shape media in the future in this great country. And therefore your role has been more important than ever. So it's up to you to tell the people what actually is happening in your country or in your world. And it should be up to bloggers. They have their panels as well, of course, but at the end of the day, we need trusted, independent journalists who explain what actually is happening in this world.
Sorry, just a little lesson in journalism. The journalist asks something, the guy who should give the answer says, let me first say, don't let that through. Insist on your question.
So back to my question.
I answered your question. Just took a little bit longer.
So back to my question. In this context, in modern journalism, going back, starting again, print journalism, we had an earlier discussion today where Michael said how, content was created, how, it wasn't as fast-paced as it is now globally. And fast-paced, digital, time of marketing is a very important key. How do you keep your ethics and values as a media house in your newsroom in this era?
I told the faculty members before, I think we have still 2,500 journalists working for our company in 20 different countries. And the profession to be a journalist has become much more complicated than 10 years ago. Fundamentally, it's still about the same thing. It's about, reporting, what is actually happening. No matter if it's sports, if it's politics, if it's economics, if it's culture, so society is basically reporting what is happening. But it has become more complicated for two reasons. The first reason is time. In newsrooms, journalists, we have the discussion often, tend to think that let's just get the news out there, and it's crucial if I'm 1 second earlier with my push notification than my competitor. And that leads to, of course, an issue with quality, because journalism also needs reflection, needs a lot of work to see behind the walls of might be news. So we're trying to teach our newsrooms that a push notification, if it's wrong, if it's badly put, can destroy what you tried to build up with your brand for years. So we have to be very careful, because credibility is very, very important. The second thing is journalists used to write what they were reporting. Today they have to be multi-channel. We have Facebook as a channel, Twitter as a channel, Snapchat as a channel, Instagram as a channel, your app as a channel. We have video. Audio is just about to grow, and I heard we're trying to build a radio for this community, which I think goes in the same direction. Audio becomes more and more important. We have live videos, etc. So journalism has become more complicated, and that's a big challenge, while at the same time usually media companies tend to cut down the costs, because monetization has become more critical for journalists.
Great. So I read something on the Reuters Institute website. Mr. Ringier? Yeah. And it says, journalism is not just collecting different views at different times and reporting them as a unit to show their validity on that so-called condition. Journalism is the search for the truth. In this era of a lot of fake news, and if you drill down into it, there's some elements of truth in it, some fake. Again, time of reporting is now a key performance indicator for journalists. We're stressed, we need to put out the content on time because we want to be the first. There's a lot of pressure on journalists to make sure they put out the message on time. What's your message as regards, balancing both? I know, Mr. Valda just gave an answer, but, coming from that era of print where you had to wait till the next day to put out the information to now that, it's, as it goes, real-time reporting, how do you convince journalists to not feel the pressure to look for the real story and put it out?
I think Mark mentioned the keyword, it's credibility. The situation of the journalists has dramatically changed. When I was a journalist, and even 15 years ago, we had the monopoly for information. Every information from a government, from a company, from whoever, had to go through our channels, be it TV or print magazines or newspapers. And we completely lost this monopoly because in the digital age, everybody can spread news. And this is a completely new situation. And I mean, when you see what kind of, is it news or information, whatever it is, you are surrounded every morning when you wake up, you get completely lost. And you don't even know what is really close to truth and what is fake, and there are a lot of people trying to have an influence, an impact, because news and opinion is a merchandise. So I like your expression, searching for truth, because there is no absolute truth, we all know. But coming closer to such a thing like truth is getting more and more important. It's much more important than even 20 years ago, because you will always have people you cannot reach with your journalism because they like to live in their own ghetto. They are in their Facebook community. They are either right wing or red wing, or they are football fans of this team, and they stay there, and nobody can really reach them. But there are many, and they are very, very important to build a society who are really interested in an analysis, in trustful information. And that's what you have to deliver in a very difficult environment.
To piggyback off that, let's talk about balance. Dr. Sid and I had a conversation no, the question's for yourself. I'm going to Dr. Sid. We had a conversation about balance. We're the fourth estate, journalism, legislative, judiciary, executive, we're the fourth estate. In a case of Trump, we saw some of the publications, New York Times and a few others, lean against him. They were visibly against him. They released statements said they were not going to support him, and he won the election. As a media house, should we not be balanced? Should we lean towards one side?
Actually, we never did. I mean that is a strategy. You can do that. Look at Rupert Murdoch. He was sometimes against the British government, sometimes with the British government, sometimes against Labour, sometimes with Labour. You can do it. It's not our task to be like that because it smells a little bit like opportunism. And we always insisted on doing journalism who is searching for the truth, whatever the truth could be. And that has always been our task. But of course, if I look back in the history of our newspaper in Switzerland, it was maybe sometimes a little bit more to the right, sometimes a little bit more to the left, because the environment changes and the situation you are in changes. Switzerland 20 years ago is not the same country as it is today. So you also have to think over your own approach to news and to what you would like to be important. But and then I'm also nothing against somebody who has a brand. If he clearly declares, you know, I'm on this side or I'm on that side, I stand for this, as long as it's visible, that's fine. What is important for a society is that it's not just more than one. I mean, you see it in every democracy where strong people try to change the democracy into something different. Look what's happening in Poland, in Turkey, in many other countries. They always go for the media. First, because usually they are old people, they go for the TV, because for them TV and print, newspaper, they then don't care too much about the digital because they don't really understand it. But they try to be in control of the media because they do not want the diversity of opinions. And that's exactly what a democratic society needs.
Thank you. Dr. Sid. So I've worked with a lot of journalists, I've written stories myself. One thing, when we have conversations and sit down, one thing I've been able to deduce is journalists go through the production of a story till the end, till when the story is done. So they go through the production, which is a story on itself, but what the consumer, what the reader see is just the story. In this production of the story, the journalists always want to let the readers know what they went through. But a very popular buzzword right now is target audience. Your target audience is not necessarily interested with or in what you went through to put the story, but the story itself. How do we now convince journalists to chase some specific type of stories or really focus on the key elements of what the target audience wants?
I think the main activity which should lead to this ideal you describe, it remains ideal, is education and education on its own. And while you go along, it's up to a publisher also to maintain education. And beyond that, I think it's very difficult to accept choosing your people to keep that course. That's about the two things you can do if you want to maintain a free spirit. Of course, you can order, but say, at least with Ringier, that's not our policy.
Maybe I can add one thing. The big advantage of digitization is if you have a good story, don't think about your audience. If you have a good story, or your target audience, if you have a good story, it will find its audience. If you had a good story in newspaper and you missed to buy the newspaper, chance was over. Next day, new newspaper. Today, if you have a good story out there, it will find its audience. Focus on storytelling, focus on searching for the truth, and it will be distributed by the audience. That's the advantage of digitization.
Great.
Can I just add something? Because we are constantly talking about facts and figures and numbers. Of course, that's very important for journalism, but I think there is an audience also for a greatly written article about nonsense. Because reading is something very special, something very important. And language is also something very important. And if the journalist can play with language and write an article you just love to read, I don't care if it's about his own toilet or whatever it is, I just love to read it.
Great. Back to Dr. Singh. So freedom of press, we also had that conversation. While countries like Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia are going through government crackdowns where they shut down media houses because they don't align with what the government wants. In Nigeria, it's freer. But we face a bigger problem, which is the economic crackdown. We have a number of publishing houses that don't pay their journalists, that the publishers even tell the journalists to, to treat their pages as advertisement pages where they can sell their own stories themselves. This in turn has skewed the kind of reporting we have in Nigeria right now, where people don't think with their heads, they think with their stomach and chase the brown envelope. What's your advice for journalists who don't get paid well or want to stick with the profession?
I'm not exactly a career advisor, particularly not in that situation. I think it's a power play, and every society has these media they deserve, and they are all subject to this power play. Even in Switzerland, we pride ourselves to be so pure. We have that kind of power play, and I think it's up to the spine of the publisher. I think that's the first pillar, that the publisher will not tolerate much of that. Maybe there is some slack in there we must accept everywhere, because we all have to live with each other, we have to live with our community, with our society, but you have to draw the line somewhere, and someone has to keep watching whether everyone draws this line. This line may divert, from society or country to society to country, but this line needs to exist.
Thank you.
But you always need a legal frame, and if a government cannot deliver this legal framework, then you're lost. I mean, we have a situation in Poland where we have a very, very right-wing government, and I think they regard us to be their biggest enemy. But because Poland is a member of the European Union, they cannot do what they really would love to do. And without being Poland a member of the European Union, we would have a very, very difficult time.
Maybe one thought from my side. It's a very good question. While we have the media industry having more problems to monetize, we have pressure on media companies, we have less media companies, we have maybe owners of media companies who have whatever reason to buy a media company or a newspaper or a news portal or whatever. It might be political, might be just because it's a hobby or a status or whatever. Let me tell you a story that should encourage everybody in here. It starts with a very dramatic happening. One of our journalists in Slovakia is a small country in Central Eastern Europe, was killed 2 months ago. He was killed because he was working on a, I would say, highly delicate story about the infiltration of the Italian mafia into government circles. So he was working on that story, and somehow he got killed. Now, that's the very sad and dramatic part. The encouraging part of this story is, if you look at what happened since then in this country, this wasn't a big media brand he was working for. It was a media brand that belongs to us. It's called Actuality. Only 15 journalists working for this media brand, so it's a small one. But it had such a big impact when it turned out that this journalist, 27 years old, was killed, that hundreds of thousands of people went Friday by Friday by Friday to the street to protest against the existing government. The Prime Minister, Fico, 6 weeks later had to leave. Members of the cabinet had to leave. And it shows you the power that independent journalism can have. And it's not a matter of size, because digitization helps you to reach as many people as want to share your story. So it's not a matter of size, it's a matter of independency and believing into independent journalism.
Thank you, Mark. Let's talk about media and journalism in the world of Facebook, Twitter, and social media. Everybody now is a journalist. In fact, everybody says I'm a content creator. How many people here call themselves content creator? Yeah, everybody's a content creator. I mean, Idara is with her phone right now. She's creating content. How do we make people responsible for the kind of content they put out? I mean, well, journalists, of course, but people who regard themselves content creators, because the users, the readers don't know. They can't tell a difference right now. Young people can't tell a difference. I could be a journalist and, report stories. I might not use my official brand to report the story, but people know me as a content creator, as a journalist. It has become a bloodline, being a journalist and a content creator, as regards the users reading and, consuming this content.
There has never been more information out there than today. It's a thunderstorm of information you are confronted with. And that's why I started my very first answer with journalism has never been more important than today, because it's so complicated to understand what should I actually believe and what is true and what is not true and what is maybe written because of a certain background or whatever. And credibility of media brands have never been more important. Now, media brand can be a blogger, but of course it's more important, it's more complicated if you're just a single person and if you belong to even a small media brand like Actuality. So we have to be very, very careful with the credibility. We can destroy within an hour, because we publish a bad news, the credibility that we were trying to build for years. So I think we as a media company, we are trying to be very, very precise and very, very close to credibility, integrity, even though there's time pressure, even though there's cost pressure, but don't mess with your credibility, I think.
And there is a new enemy out there, it's the algorithm. But there is an estimate that between 15 to 20% of all Twitter news is produced by bots, by machines. And this is increasing. So at the end, you have to make clear, and this only works by branding it, that your article or your news or whatever is created by a human being.
To add to that, a few weeks ago, I noticed on my Twitter a lot of accounts were following me, maybe close to 20. They had no pictures, and when I click on them, they would have random names, probably 1 or 2 followers, but they were following a lot of people. And I had, a news reporter just check it, go through my, and he estimated there were about 20 to 25 following me every day, and we were able to track them to 3 or 4 media influencers. So we've kind of postulated that they are preparing for the elections next year. And these bots accounts, once you click, they all tweet at the same time, they retweet the same kind of post and all that. So we see this happening, which leads me to my next question. Unverifiable facts that go out every day from all these bot accounts that influence the minds and decisions of readers and users on social platforms. Do media houses now need to create their own fact-finding teams, other than just put out real content, good content? Do we need now to focus on creating fact-finding teams to dispel this fake news and really hone down and say this is what is fake, this is what is real?
Fact-checking is just incredibly important. Again, the shitstorm you get if you put out wrong news, and you have to. People will find out. You will always find out if news was right or wrong. But the shitstorm you will get and the image damage is just not worth it. So yes, we have to be more careful with what we publish more than ever.
I mean, we have an American president who lies, I think, in average 6 times a day. So fact-checking is really important.
Great. Dr. C, how do we distinguish ourselves from these other platforms, these fake platforms, these bots, and these content creators who put out unverifiable facts? What are the ways we can always distinguish ourselves? I mean, we can always, we are creating real news, we are creating authentic news, but what other ways do you think we can actually further distinguish ourselves?
I think we should not go against something. There's no chance. And the people who like to read these kind of news platforms, yeah, there's nothing you can do. You only can do something for yourself and for your own brand. And really, it's all about branding. The media business is a brand business, and so you have to treat your brand extremely careful and do everything what Mark mentioned in the last 20 minutes. But there's not much or nothing we can do against all the others. Breitbart is there. There's nothing we cannot fight against, but of course we can do a different, can have a different approach to journalism.
All right.
Valuable to add.
Let's move into how journalists and media professionals can carve a career in this modern world. To put this in context, I was trying to rent a place, and my landlord asked, or my future landlord asked me, "What do you do?" I said, "I'm a journalist." He said he can't rent the place to me.